It's not who I am underneath. It's what I do that defines me. There's so much superhero trilogies out there, and it's sometimes hard to pick which one is the best. I have my idea of which one is the best, but also I wanted to do this video of just putting out my reasons why while there are so many of them. And also I also include the trilogies that have a fourth installment, which we can call them a saga. So let's get on with it, shall we? The Iron Man trilogy, I feel, could have been much better, especially after how great and revolutionary the first film was. I think the first film is one of the best Marvel movies, and casting Robert Downey Jr. was one of the most inspiring choices that Hollywood has made in the past 20 years. I think that the first movie is just groundbreaking. It's got amazing special effects, just fantastic screenplay, and really fun and adventuristic vibe. Just a fun super vibe that you just don't really get anymore in the MCU. I love the fact that it's just a standalone film and it's not really connected to anything other than the post-credit scene. I think it's a fantastic film all around. The first Iron Man is just brilliant. Iron Man 2 is simply just a boring film. It really is. It's really hard to sit through. It's just kind of a big mess of a movie. The screenplay is just uninspired. You can tell that they just rushed this film into production because the first one is such a hit. Not really new additions like Scarlet Joe, and you're introduced to the Shield, which is nice. It's interesting, but they don't really do much with the characters, and I really don't like the Robert Downey Jr. The Iron Man plot where he sort of loses it on alcohol. I don't like that he becomes a drunk, and I think it just takes too much of the runtime. The Iron Man 3 with Ben Kingsley and directed by Shane Black, I think it's an alright movie. It's sort of just more of a Shane Black movie than an NCU movie, and I hate the twist. I really hate the Mandarin twist, because you just set Ben Kingsley up as this terrifying bad guy, and he ends up being just an awful waste of a character. So I think the Iron Man trilogy is one of the weakest of the MCU, unfortunately. So I'd put this on a 6 out of 10 on the trilogy scale. I think it's not terrible, but I just the last two installments are really not what I wanted out of the trilogy, especially after how great the first one was. The Thor trilogy is a mixed bag for me. I really would like the first Thor film directed by Kenneth Branagh. I think it's just a wonderful movie. It's got great action and great complex characters to go with it. It's just a really fun time. And the Dark World, I guess it's fine. It's just immediately forgettable. It's not terrible. It's not torture if you watch it, but it's just very bland. It's not the worst MCU movie in my opinion, because as time went on, we've had worse since the Dark World, but it's just a very boring film. Thor Ragnarok, in my opinion, I like some of it, but some of it just goes way too the silly for me to appreciate. There are some cool scenes. I love the Thor versus Hulk fight on Sakura. I think that's what the name of the planet is. I love their fight. I love just the style of the movie, but overall, The humor in it, I think, is almost overbearing at times. But it's much better than that piece of trash, Thor: Love and Thunder, that we have. And then, of course, we have Love and Thunder. I think Love and Thunder is one of the worst films in the MCU. It's just god awful. It's a very bad comedy. And it doesn't stop. It's just joke after joke after joke, and the jokes don't hit. So it's very painful to watch. So I put the Thor trilogy a 6 out of 10 on the trilogy scale. I To me, there's only one great Thor movie, and that's the first Thor. I think that they really nailed the tone they were going for overall. Now we get to the Guardians trilogy. Guardians 1 is one of my favorite films of the MCU. Despite a weak villain in Ronan, I think that the team, the Guardians of the Galaxy team, really makes up for it. It's got great dialogue, really snappy one-liners, really fun humor. I think it's just an overall great film. The second one, I think it's alright. It's got a little too many jokes for my taste, but I think that the villain is actually better than the first one. Just Kurt Russell is just fantastic in this movie, and also Yondu's death is tragic. For the third and final film, I really think it's solid. Now I don't really like what they did with Adam Warlock really at all. I think he was kind of a wasted character, and to me the Rocket's flashbacks are sort of really hard to watch. But I think the movie is really entertaining overall. I think it's a great trilogy capper. So I think Guardians, the Guardians trilogy is one of the best trilogies at Marvel. I would put it like an 8 out of 10. I think it's a really solid trilogy. It really ends the I think that Guardians 3 really ends the Guardians trilogy well. And now we have the Ant-Man trilogy. The Ant-Man trilogy, I think it's just a bar. It's nothing really all that great. The first one, I think, is like a fun heist film, and it's really well directed by Peyton Reed. I think like there's some few good humoristic moments, and I love Michael Pena in there, Evangeline Lilly. I think the cast is great. There's Michael Douglas also, and when he's de-aged, it looks great. But I think that's the best one of the entire trilogy. The second Ant-Man and the third Ant-Man are like just whatever. The first Ant-Man is what, the second Ant-Man is whatever, and the third Ant-Man is whatever. So I think that personally that the third Ant-Man movie is one of the worst MCU movies I've ever seen in my life. So yeah, I think the Ant-Man trilogy is not really all that great. I would put it like a 5 out of 10 on the trilogy scale. I think it's just alright, but not one of my favorite characters, unfortunately. One of my favorite MCU trilogies is by far, I think, the Captain America trilogy. You got the first Avenger, which I think is one of the most underrated comic book films of the past 15 years. I think it's really fun, it's entertaining, and I think Chris Evans just kills it in the role. I love the World War II setting as well, and I love Hugo Weaving as Red Skull. I think he's just fantastic. And now we get into the Winter Soldier, which I think is just a brilliant action film. It's in my top 3 MCU films. It's just incredible. It's just an amazing action film that it's relentless. It's got great characters, a great story, and is just a fantastic piece of cinema. The third film, Civil War, I think it's harder to enjoy the film on rewatches for me. It sort of meanders, and I know who I'm picking for. I'm Team Cap all the way, and I know that Iron Man is wrong in here. So it's kind of hard to just sit through it because, like, you know that he's making the wrong decisions all the way through Civil War. But I love the ending fight between Captain America and Iron Man. I think it's just a great way to end Civil War, and how Captain America breaks everybody out of the prison at the end. I think it's just really inspiring. So I think Civil War is a solid conclusion to the Captain America trilogy. I think it's really entertaining, but it's hard to rewatch like a couple of times because the movie is kind of so long. But there are some parts I don't think that are as great as they could have been. So I would put the Captain America trilogy at 8.5 out of 10 on the trilogy scale. As for DC, there's not a lot of trilogies to pick from, so this is easy. It's the Dark Knight trilogy, which is truly fabulous in my opinion. Batman Begins is a great origin film. Christian Bale is my favorite Batman of all time. He's just fantastic here. Liam Neeson is great as Ducard, his trainer. Just Cillian Murphy as Scarecrow. Everything here, everything works. It's just a great origin film and just a fantastic opener for the trilogy. And yeah, just Batman Begins is one of my favorite films of all time, as is The Dark Knight, which is even better. It's even better than Batman Begins. And you got Heath Ledger as the Joker, who delivers his finest performance. I think he's just unrecognizable as the Madman. The Clown Madman. He's just absolutely terrific, and this entire movie is just a crime drama. And I think director Christopher Nolan does some of his finest work here. And The Dark Knight is in my top 5 favorite films of all time. It's just absolutely incredible. Now we arrive to The Dark Knight Rises, which I do enjoy, but I do recognize that it's the weakest out of the 3 films. I think that there are really good merits to the movie. I think the acting is still strong here. I think that the action sequences are still exciting. I think that the stakes are very high in this film. And that I also love Bane and Catwoman. I think they're both terrific villains. But there are also things that bother me. There are things that don't work in this film, stuff that don't make sense. We just don't know where this prison is. How does Batman get back into Gotham? Just things like that don't really add up for me. They don't really work. But as a pure action film, I think The Dark Knight Rises works for me. It really does. I think it's really just entertaining. Not as great as the first 2, but I think it's a really solid movie. I would rank the Dark Knight trilogy a 9.5 on the trilogy scale. As for the Sony films, we now get into the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, which I really love these films. I think the first one is one of my favorite comic book movies. I know some people prefer the second one over the first. I'm actually the one of the few that prefer the first one over the second. I think the first one is a perfect origin story for Spider-Man. It's got some good action sequences, some good humor, and I really loved it when I first saw it when I was a kid. And William Dafoe in the first one is just fabulous. The second one I think is still great. I think there's even more corny moments here and there, and like MJ just she really annoys me. I think she's in these movies way too much. I really like Kristen Dunst as an actress, but I think here she's miscast as MJ. But Doc Ock, I think, is really fantastic here. Alfred Molina as Doc Ock is terrific, and just the dynamic between Tobey Maguire and James Franco has shifted because James Franco thinks that Spider-Man kills his dad, and he blames also Peter, but of course Peter has nothing to do with it. I think that's a bit silly, but then again, it's just a great movie all around, a great sequel. And now we enter Spider-Man 3, which is pretty bad. It's not, I don't think it's a train wreck like some people make it out to be, but it's still pretty awful. It's not really a well-made movie. There's some plot inconveniences. Things just don't add up. Things don't make sense. I like some of the acting in Spider-Man 3, despite the emo Peter, which has turned into a funny meme on the internet. But overall, I don't think that Spider-Man 3 is as bad as people say, but it's still pretty bad. And you got just too much stuff in there. You got too much villains. There's not enough time for each, and it gets way too overcrowded. Also, you sort of redo the same story beats that you've done in the first two previous Spider-Man films. So it doesn't really feel fresh anymore. It just sort of feels kind of repetitive. I would give the Spider-Man trilogy, the first Spider-Man trilogy, at 8 out of 10 on the trilogy scale. I think the first two are really great, but the third one, it really sort of tanks everything down, unfortunately. Now we get to the Tom Holland Spider-Man trilogy, which I think is pretty decent. It's pretty overall entertaining. Tom Holland, I think he's a great Spider-Man. He's probably my second favorite, or maybe it's really hard to say because Andrew Garfield is so good in No Way Home. Even though his movies are terrible, he's so great in No Way Home. So maybe Andrew Garfield might be my second favorite Spider-Man. I don't know. I think all three are fantastic. And the first one, Homecoming, I think is a solid, fun, entertaining film. It's a bit hard to rewatch for me personally. I don't really go back and rewatch Homecoming all that much, but I think when I saw it, I really enjoyed it. I thought that Michael Keaton was great as Vulture, and I thought it had a nice John Hugh vibe, which was a bit much for me, but overall I think was all right. It was decent. The second one didn't really hit for me. I didn't appreciate it as much as the first installment. It felt like just a side adventure that really didn't want to go on. And I think that Jake Gyllenhaal's Magneto Mysterio was completely wasted as a character, and I think his character reveal is just very sloppily done. It's very just pretty bad. Yeah, the second one I really just think it's meh. I think it's just fine for what it is, but it's nothing grand. The third one, No Way Home, I think is really great. I think it's really epic. Of course, it's great seeing all three Spider-Man together in one film. Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland are all terrific in this film. Things could have gone sideways easily. There's a lot of more villains than they were in Spider-Man 3 and Amazing Spider-Man, but here they do a good job of balancing it all. And I think that it's a really fun, entertaining film. It does sort of go on the nostalgia line a little bit over it, but overall, I think Spider-Man No Way Home is one of the best Spider-Man films ever made. The Blade Trilogy, in my opinion, is solid entertainment. It's nothing grand. I don't really hold the Blade trilogy like as high regard as much like as other trilogies. I think the first one is solid entertainment. The second one is pretty good as well, but the third one, Blade Trinity, let's just not talk about that one. So I think the first one is the best one out of the bunch. And I put the Blade trilogy like a 7 out of 10 on the trilogy scale. I think it's a pretty solid entertainment. Now we get into the X-Men trilogies, which I think that most of the X-Men trilogies are pretty solid. Not all of the movies are solid, but the trilogies overall are pretty decent. The first X-Men movie is known for having changed the comic book genre forever. It started the golden age of comic book movies, and for good reason. Back then, I think it was more well received than it is now, because it sort of aged a little bit. You can tell that some moments are are aren't as good as they were back in 2001. But I think that the characters and the situations and just the politics overall are good enough for the movie to be a solid fun time when you watch it in 2024. The second one, X-Men United, I think is one of my favorite comic book films. It's dark, it's got a thriller vibe, it's just an overall well-crafted film. And you just delve deeper into the lore of the X-Men and deeper into the characters. And I think it's just a terrific movie. Now we get into the last 10, which is the weakest of the three, unfortunately. Brett Ratner is not really a good director, despite, I think, making two hilarious Rush Hour films. Here, I think the movie is just fine, I guess. I don't hate the last 10, but there's very questionable decisions throughout. It doesn't make any sense, really, as a screenplay. Things just don't add up, which is kind of unfortunate because the first two are really stronger than this film. This is just like a popcorn movie, while the first two they were really smart. They were really they changed the game. They changed the game in the comic book genre. And here it's just a very just fine film for what it is. So I would put the X-Men, the first X-Men trilogy, like in solid 8 out of 10 out of the trilogy scale. I think it's a pretty decent trilogy. The First Class trilogy, for me, I think it might be even a little bit better. I think that the First Class is a really solid, entertaining film. I love the new cast. It's just pumps the new life in the X-Men universe, especially after I think it came out after X-Men Origins Wolverine, which I think that was just a very low point in the X-Men universe. And here, X-Men First Class really pumped new life into it. Like I said, I love the new cast. And now we go into X-Men Days of Future Past, which I think might be my favorite X-Men film. I think it's just fantastic. It blends the old cast and the new cast superbly well. It's just a terrific movie filled with fun action, interesting characters, and a cool concept. That's really done well in my opinion. So I think that X-Men Days of Future Past is one of my favorite comic book movies of all time. And now we get into Apocalypse. I think that Apocalypse is one of the worst comic book movies of all time. It's crazy how one movie can be so great and then the next one in the same like universe can be just so terrible. It's just an awful film. The villain is completely laughable, and Oscar Isaac is awesome, but here the makeup, just everything, the characterization is just really bad. The special effects are pretty good for what they are, but they don't do anything with the screenplay. The story is laughable. The final act is just really hard to watch. This movie is really hard to sit through, and it's like way too long for what it is. So it's even that more painful. And then we arrive to Dark Phoenix, which I think is a little better than Apocalypse for me personally, but it's not all that great either. I think it's a very just slow and boring film. It's not a very exciting film, and you can tell that it's the first time director that directed this movie, and he didn't really know what to do with the big budget. So yeah, I think there's two movies in there that I really enjoyed, and two movies I'm just so on. So I would put the X-Men First Class trilogy on an 8 out of 10 on the trilogy scale. I think that's fair. Now the last trilogy on this list is the Wolverine trilogy, which I think is pretty solid, minus X-Men Wolverine, minus X-Men Wolverine Origins, which is just everything. It's just awful. It's just an awful film. There's really not much redeemable aspects of this movie, except that Hugh Jackman is great in the role. That's it. There's nothing really to recommend about X-Men Origins Wolverine, and it could have been great. It could have been a great movie just to explore his origins, but there was no idea to start things off. It's just a very poor film. The sequel, The Wolverine, I think is a very solid sequel. It's also explores a very intriguing concept of what would happen if Wolverine actually lost his powers. I think that's a great concept, and it takes place in a very exotic location, which is in Japan. I think that's a very good idea. It's a very solid sequel. The ending isn't as strong as the first two acts, unfortunately, but overall, I think that this movie is very solid. It's very fun. The last one, Logan, is one of my favorite comic book films of all time. It's definitely in the top 10. It's just so great. It's rated R, it's violent, it's exciting, it's got a great screenplay, fantastic characters, just a very exciting film, a very entertaining film, and it's got just an emotional climax to top it off. So, just an overall very good trilogy. I would also put it on an 8 out of 10 on the trilogy scale. I think it's solid, but the first one is so bad that I can't put the needle above an 8, unfortunately. So what is the best trilogy of all time, in my opinion? For me, I think it's the Dark Knight trilogy. I think that's the golden standard of comic book movies that still hasn't been matched today. I think it's an incredible achievement from Christopher Nolan. He completely reinvented the character and made Batman way more realistic than what he was. Tim Burton really reinvented, like he made Batman his own in the 1980s. But Nolan just completely reinvented the character in the 2000s. I think Nolan did such a great job with the character and creating the Gotham, just the entire universe. It feels completely realistic. I love the villains. I love just every movie in that trilogy, and I just really adore this trilogy of movies. I think they're the finest comic book movies ever made, and yeah, that's it. Let me know what you think is the finest comic book trilogy ever made down in the comments below. See you next time. Bye.